Okay, it's 1 o'clock now. I'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about Grape City Spread Services, the spreadsheet document server component for .NET Core. My name is Sean Lawyer, and I'm a product manager here at Grape City. I've been working with the spreadsheet team ever since we got acquired back in 2009 when I worked at Farpoint Technologies. And ever since then, I've been working with various spreadsheet products. Currently, I manage the Spread.net product and the Spread Services product. Today, I'm going to talk about Spread Services. This product is relatively new, having just released in August 2017, with one major service pack update released in December for version 1.4.0. So you may not have heard about Spread Services yet. In this webinar, I will explain all about Grape City Spread Services and how you can use it to power up your .NET Core applications with advanced spreadsheet processing. I only have 1 hour to cover a lot of material, so I'll try to go relatively fast so I have enough time to cover all the stuff I want to in the demos. That's where I want to really focus most of my time, and still have some time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have questions during the presentation, please type those into the questions window, and I will address those at the Q&A time at the end. The agenda for this webinar is first to present a general overview of Spread Services and what the product is all about. Then I will cover the wide variety of platforms and targets in which Spread Services can operate. Following that, I will present a brief overview of the Spread Services API and the raw power it delivers in terms of flexibility and incredible performance. I will also briefly discuss some use case scenarios to provide some context about how the components might be used in real-life applications. Then we'll move right into demo time. I'll dive right into the online demo sample feature demos to show a quick overview of some of the key features, and then show a quick tour through some sample projects in Visual Studio, and run a quick benchmark demo to show off the performance of Grape City Spread Services. I'll also show how Grape City Spread Services can be used together with its sister product, Spread.js Sheets, which is licensed separately using the SSJSON format that they both understand. Then I'll cover licensing and distribution of Spread Services and about how to obtain an evaluation license key. Finally, at the end, I'll take questions. Okay, let's jump right into it. What is Spread Services all about? Here's a quick overview of Spread Services. Spread Services is Grape City's newest spreadsheet component, and this version of Spread is totally developed from the ground up, specifically focused with the intent to make the best and fastest possible spreadsheet document library, which supports the entire Microsoft Excel VSTO object model for spreadsheet documents. Spread Services is implemented in C# and built to target .NET Core 1.0 and .NET Standard 1.4, and it's the server component of the future that we will continue to support for many years going forward. Spread Services implements ultra-fast formula calculation by using emit to generate dynamic intermediate language for the formula expressions, and that's how it does the calculation. Unfortunately, that's not supported in iOS because Apple doesn't permit the emit APIs in iOS. So deployed on the iOS platform, Spread Services is limited to to reading in the formulas as strings. But that limitation only applies when deployed to iOS. Every other operating system supports the omit. Spread services can load any XLS document and access all its content. You can add, remove sheets, edit cells, formulas, charts, shapes, pivot tables, etc. Then save the result back to XLSX. It can integrate directly with any .NET platform targeting version 4.6 or later. It also includes built-in special support for integrating with Spread.js spread.sheets component on the client. You can use the SSJSON format to pass workbooks between the client and the server, and Spread.js sheets can be used as the front-end editor. I will show some demos of that later in the demo portion. You can also create web services, Azure functions, or other types of back-end logic for generating and/or processing XLSX or SSJSON content, or performing server-side calculations for web applications. Now I want to talk about the platforms and targets supported. Spread Services is built to target .NET Core 1.0, and it requires no other dependencies. So it's very flexible. It works in all platforms supported by .NET Standard 1.4 and later. And it does work in .NET Core 2, just as well as it does in .NET Core 1. So that includes .NET Core, .NET Framework, all Mono, all the different flavors of Xamarin, and Universal Windows Platform. You can also deploy .NET Core 2 serverless apps to Azure Functions or Amazon AWS Lambda. Okay, now I want to talk about the API. Spread Services implements a modern implementation of the VSTO object model using generics and nullable types. It's implemented entirely in C#. It's mostly interface-based, with only about a dozen classes to learn, but covering a very wide range of features and nearly 300 total types. The API mirrors Excel VSTO, so if you have familiarity already with Excel's Visual Studio Tools for Office API, using it from C# or VB.NET or VBA inside of Excel, that experience can carry over directly to using Spread Services. Spread Services is designed to be very fast performing, especially for cases dealing with very large amounts of data. I'll show some performance tests later where it can load at least 1.5 million cells per second. It's also designed to be very fast at calculating large and complex workbooks. I've mentioned how it can use emit to compile formulas directly to intermediate language for super fast calculation. It's also quite memory efficient. The storage model is designed to use minimal memory for fast performance. Now I'll talk about some common use cases. Use cases for spreadsheets are very widely varied, so I'll cover only a few of the common scenarios. The most common are creating .NET Core Web API for dashboards or reporting. Spreadsheets are primarily designed for organizing, calculating, and visualizing data. That's what they're best at. They can also be used for modeling, different kinds of analysis, or specialized calculators for specialized purposes like engineering. Another common use case is creating decision tables for business logic. For example, using Drools or Oracle Determinations Engine or IBM Operational Decision Manager to split your business logic from your applications and import new decision tables using Excel documents. Spread Services can also be used for spreadsheet document processing applications like merging workbooks containing many expense reports or sales reports into one dashboard or merged workbook report. It could also be used to implement many kinds of automation and back-end processing. Since it supports much of the VSTO API, most VBA macro code can easily be ported to C# web service calls that are integrated directly into your web applications. It can be used to create .NET Core web applications by integrating directly with Spread.Sheets, the Spread.js product that's sold separately. I'll show some demos of that later. And Spread.Services can integrate with any .NET 4.6 or later application to be used for any kind of backend spreadsheet document processing. And that includes Windows Forms, ASP.NET, WPF, UWP. All right, that about covers the use cases. And now I'm ready to move on to demo time. And I'm really excited that we're not too far into the session. I should have a lot of time to show demos. First, I want to show the demo that you see pictured on the screen there, the featured demo sample. I'm going to just briefly go over some of the demo samples in there to show the more common use cases and to show how the Spread.Sheets viewer can be used to integrate with Spread.Services. I'll also show the Getting Started tutorial that you see pictured there and demonstrate that in Visual Studio. We'll move on to Visual Studio, where I'll show the Getting Started tutorial and the Angular and React and benchmark demos. Actually, let's go here first. Before I go into the demo for showing the demo that's on the website, first I want to show the website itself. This is the main web page for Spread Services. You can access this by going to the main Grape City website and going to Products, Spread Services. And the demo sample I'm about to show is accessible directly from here. Click Demo and then open this link, and it will open this demo sample. I'll start by showing the featured demos. I'm not actually going to show these demos. I'm just going to scroll through and show the wide range of little feature demo samples that are included in this demo. Each of these are intended as sort of a tutorial that focus on one particular API to teach you how that API works. And it's all divided out here in a huge hierarchy. If you're interested in looking for some particular thing like all of the different chart-related APIs or all of the different pivot table-related APIs, you can use the search bar at the top to restrict the list. And these demos are very handy for learning how to do particular things. For example, setting values into a range, a basic task. And there's the code to do it. To take this set of values in an array of objects and set it to the worksheet.range.value for this range. Next, I want to show the demos using the Spread.js Sheets viewer as a client side. Now, again, I want to emphasize that the Sheets viewer, this the spreadsheet embedded inside the browser here, this is not part of Spread Services. This is licensed separately as part of the Spread.js product. But we do have integration between the two products built in because they both understand the SSJSON format. So these examples are showing loading a spreadsheet on the server and converting it to SSJSON that's passed back to the client and load it here for editing. The user can make changes to these cells or to the contents in the workbook, add notes, add text, add other calculations, whatever. And when you click the export button, it will take the content from the spread.sheets, save it to SSJSON, and pass it back to the server to be exported back to XLSX and downloaded. I'll show some demos of that actually in Visual Studio a little later. I think the most common use case for spread services will be the Excel reporting and the Excel templates. First, I'll talk about Excel reporting. These demos here are showing the use case of actually building up an entire workbook dynamically to build out a report. For example, this one, cost analysis with Pareto chart. First, it initializes a new workbook, puts data in, creates a chart with 2 series in it to create a nice Pareto chart. When I run it, here is what the output looks like. In Excel. Now, an even more common use case, I think, is Excel templates. These demo samples show loading an Excel file on the server and then adding more data or doing some changes to the Excel file to add more to it. This is a common use case for reporting. You can have your formulas or your charts or other analytics for KPIs or whatever already set up in your dashboard or your report, and then go inject the data using spread services. This demo shows a blood sugar tracker. First, I'll show the base Excel file that's used as a template. This is what's loaded initially on the server. And then the code on the server after loading the template here. Insert some rows, adds a chart, adds a rectangle shape, put some rich text into the rectangle shape, including a link here. And after we run it, the resulting Excel file will have that inserted chart referencing these cells here and the inserted shape. This demo also has, for novices, a tutorial demo. If you're just getting started with .NET Core and you want some help getting a new console application started to try it out, this tutorial will step you through the process. It has steps for creating a new console application using the .NET CLI or using Visual Studio, and how to use the NuGet package to go get it. I've already created this in Visual Studio, so I'll just skip ahead and show the result of actually doing those steps. What the tutorial does is shows the use case of creating a new Excel document from scratch and building up a report. And the report contains styles, conditional formatting, chart, and then it saves it to an Excel file. When I run it, it's actually not very impressive because it's a console app that just produces a file, so there's not much to see. But I can show the result of the file. This is what the file looks like in Excel. Now, this sheet here that you're seeing contains the evaluation warning message. This is what comes up in saved documents when you don't use a license key. And I'll talk about spread services licensing later after the demos. And here is the actual content of the sheet that was produced. When you have a developer license, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't see this happen. Okay, next I want to show one of the demo samples that we have posted on the GitHub page. Let me backtrack here. This spread services demo on the home page at the top over here, there is a link to the GitHub project. Here I have it opened already to the GitHub page for spread services for .NET. Here we have posted an ASP.NET Core demo sample. That's the next sample that I'm going to show. This is the demo sample for ASP.NET Core using React. This sample contains 3 different parts to the demo. The first part shows that use case with Excel templates. That's the use case I described where you open an Excel document on the server and then make some changes to it to generate a report or add content to the document. The next one is the programming demo, and that one demonstrates the use case of generating an entire Excel document on the server from scratch and then returning it. And finally, there's the Excel I/O demo, which demonstrates the use case of integrating your application with the Spread.js Sheets control on the client side to use it as a viewer for an Excel document that's then uploaded back to the server to be handled by spread services. Now, first I want to show the Excel template demo and how it works. On the server, it loads this simple invoice, XLSX, and then renders it on the client. And then there's just a button to export that back to Excel. You could make changes to it on the client side because this example is also showing using the Spread.js control, Spread.js Sheets control on the client side. It calls this load spread from template, which calls into the service, the spread services controller, get SSJSON from template method. The code for that is in here. Get SSJSON from template, loads the template into a workbook, and then returns the JSON. Next, I want to talk about the programming demo. That one's also pretty simple. This one just has a list of 3 different predefined workbooks that correspond to methods in the controller, where it will generate those workbooks and then return them. It uses this load spread from use case when there's a change in the use case selection to call into the spread services controller, get SSJSON from use case, which is here. It's very similar to this other one, except it calls this method create workbook by case name, which calls one of these other methods, which are down here, which actually generate the workbook in code. Again, these demos are posted to GitHub, so I'm just going to scroll through quickly. You can download and run these demos yourself after the webinar. Finally, I want to show the Excel.io demo code. The Excel.io demo code, I think, is the coolest. This shows using the spread.sheets control on the client side as a viewer. So we have an instance of the spread.sheets workbook here, and a couple of buttons to import and export, and then the code to go and call import Excel on the spread services controller to import the file and take the SSJSON returned and put it into the instance of spread.sheets. And when you click the export button, it calls this export Excel method, which is over here, which also calls into the spread services controller into the export Excel method. And I'll show those codes here. Here is import Excel and export Excel. And I'll show this running. Okay, here is the Excel template demo. Here's the invoice example. I can add items to it and then export it to Excel and see my changes in the Excel file. Here. Here are the different predefined templates that are loaded for the programming API demo. And here is the Excel input-output demo. This one can load any Excel sheet. And display it in the spread.sheets control for editing. You can make other changes to it, add a new sheet, put new content, then export it back to Excel. And of course, when you pass it back to the server, you can also make further changes to it on the server side if needed. If you need to do validation on what changes were made in the workbook, you can do that as well. These projects are available on GitHub. And there's another version of this exact same demo that's implemented using Angular instead of React. I won't show that because it's pretty much the same. Not really any different. I also want to show the benchmark demo. there's a benchmark demo that's included on the GitHub page here. This demo will take an Excel file that's put into the input folder, read it in, calculate the formulas in it, and display how long it took and how much memory it took to calculate it, and then save it back to a new file and display how long it took and how much memory it took. And we have a predefined file that we've included that we use for performance testing that's got a lot of formulas in it and does some strenuous calculations. It's called testperformance.xlsx. It's got a lot of cells and a lot of formulas. It takes about 2.4 seconds to load, 2.1 seconds to save, and just under a second to calculate, which is not bad. Not bad at all. Very fast. This is what that file looks like. This is the output from running the demo. So this workbook has the evaluation warning sheet in it, as well as all of the formulas and junk that's being loaded. I think there's 2,000 rows of stuff being calculated here. I've written another benchmark demo. That's a bit different than this one. This benchmark demo creates a workbook with 3 sheets in it, and each sheet has 100,000 rows by 18 columns filled with random data. And then with a stopwatch, I time how long it takes to load the data into each sheet and how much memory it took. Now it generates different random data for each sheet so that there's no reduction or optimizing of the file size by sharing values in cells or anything like that. This is all random raw data being generated. So I'll show this running, which again isn't terribly impressive to look at because it's just a console application. But I can show the output result. This is what it output in the console window. 1.3 seconds in after writing the first worksheet, 2 seconds in after writing the second worksheet, 2.6 seconds in after writing the third worksheet, and about 15 seconds total to produce this file, which takes Excel a little while to load. Each of these sheets has 100,000 rows by 18 columns of data, so that's 1.8 million cells per sheet. And it actually seems to get faster the more sheets it writes, which is kind of strange. But all of the values are random generated data, so. All right, that is all I had for demos. I am ready to move on to discussing licensing and evaluation. Okay, this I hope not to confuse everybody about because it's a little complicated. So I'm going to take some time to go over this slowly and carefully. And if you have any questions, please do chime in the questions, and I'll certainly get to those. Or right after this, we'll be done pretty much. Okay, the spread services control requires a developer license. It uses developer licensing as the basis for the licensing. The developer license, each developer license that's purchased includes one distribution license key that's included with the developer license. The distribution license key is required, one distribution license key is required per separate distribution, and a distribution is defined as a particular server host name that's being deployed for a web application or a named mobile or desktop application that's being deployed. The included distribution license key with the developer license is an annual distribution license key, which means that it has an expiration date built into it and won't work beyond the 1 year date from when it was generated, from the purchase date of the developer license, or rather, I'm sorry, not the purchase date of the developer license, but the generation date of the distribution key, which doesn't have to be generated at the same time as the developer license. We also have perpetual distribution license keys available, and you can get a perpetual distribution license key instead of the annual key with the developer license for an added fee. The difference between the perpetual distribution license keys and the annual keys is the perpetual keys do not have an expiration. They will work forever, but they're only valid for that particular version, for that particular major release version. So you would need to upgrade and purchase a new perpetual distribution license key for the next major release version, whereas the other one, the annual fee, if you continue paying the annual fee, you can continue using the latest version. You get automatic upgrades to the latest version as part of the subscription when you pay the renewal for the developer license and the distribution license. Now here's an example of the license code. The license code is actually quite simple. All you have to do is pass your distribution license key, which is just a text string, a big long text string that's encrypted, into the set license method of License Manager before you create your first instance of Workbook. And that's it. Once you've done that, it should continue to work without limitation. Now, you saw in some of the demos that I showed that there was a evaluation splash sheet added in the workbooks that are saved. That's what happens if you don't have a distribution license key, or if you're using an evaluation version license key. Without an actual production distribution license key, a key that's licensed with the developer license, some limitations are going to apply in the application that's using spread services. We do want people to go and try it. So we don't put any functional limitations on running, test programs and samples that you want to create. We put some limitations in the total number of files that can be opened and saved. And we put some limitations in the total amount of time that the application can run and still use the spread services APIs. So if there's no distribution license key passed in at all, so if you don't have any code at all calling license manager and you don't pass a license key into set license, then you're running in the unlicensed state, and it will only allow you to open or save a maximum of 100 files and will only operate for a maximum of 10 hours per separate execution of the application. You would have to close the application and reopen it to reset the clock on the 10 hours and the 100 files. We do have evaluation distribution license keys available on request. That will get past the limitation on files and allow you to do as many files as you want, and the limitation on operating time for execution. But it still has the limitation that it expires. I think the distribution, the evaluation keys are 30 or 60-day keys that they issue, and then after they expire, it reverts back to as if it's not licensed. Okay, I hope I didn't completely confuse everybody with that last slide. I don't see any questions, so. Ooh, I see a question. Let me do a quick wrap up, and then I will get to that. Yes, spread services. I want to summarize real quick. Spread services is the ultimate .NET Core tool for fast XLSX use, fast calculation, and fast Excel VSTO API. You can use it to create web API, web applications, and more. You can deploy it to serverless Azure functions or AWS Lambda. You can do spreadsheet automation, processing, batch processing, decision tables, reporting, dashboards, dynamic spreadsheet generation. You can integrate it with spread.sheets, which is sold separately. You can implement important server-side logic, important logic that you have in server code instead of in client script code. That's better for your code security. You could do server-side calculation. It's easy to use with React, Angular, etc. And spread services has no dependencies other than .NET Core. I hope everybody is excited to go and start a trial of spread services if you haven't already. Here is a link to where to get to the GitHub demo samples. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact support. Now, I see a couple of questions. Well, one question and a partial question. First, let me address the question about named ranges. Yes, named ranges are absolutely supported. There's full support for adding defined names as any kind of expression. So you can actually specify any kind of formula expression just like in spread.net. Yes, there's full support for named ranges. Okay, I see a question from Luke saying, can I have an existing Excel file saved on the server? Then once the client uploads an Excel file, we can use that data on the existing Excel file saved. Then use spread.js to show part of the Excel file on the client side. Yes, certainly you can. If you wanted to just show a portion of some content that you had in another file, you might want to split that content off into a separate instance of workbook and save that as a separate file for the user to operate on. But yeah, once the file is uploaded as either XLSX or SSJSON from the client side, on the server side, you can load that content into spread services and then do whatever you need to with the entire API for spread services to access that content, validate it, change it, or put it into different instances of workbook. Okay, I see a question about backwards compatibility between different versions of spread services. Right now, we've only had a couple of releases, so backwards compatibility hasn't been a huge concern. But yes, we do very much concern ourselves with backwards compatibility between releases. So if there were any breaking changes introduced in the API, we would certainly let you know about that. That very rarely happens. Generally, future releases are 100% backwards compatible with previous releases. Okay, I see another question. Can I do everything with spread services that I can do with Farpoint spread? Actually, you can do way more with spread services. I'm not sure which Farpoint spread version you mean, but it doesn't matter so much because every other previous release of spread has not had the level of support for the Excel document that this version has. This version supports just about everything, including array formulas, pivot tables, everything right now, everything except for printing to PDF, and that is pending. That's coming in April. We do have version 2 scheduled to release in April, and that will introduce PDF printing support. I see a question about a limitation for number of sheets, rows, and columns. As far as I know, the only limitations are identical to what they are in Excel. So the same limits for number of rows and columns and sheets would apply. I believe those limits are 256 sheets, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they've upped that to more sheets. And for rows, I believe the limit's really high. And columns, it's pretty high too. I know they increased those, but they would match the current version of Excel 2016. I think I've covered all the questions that are pending now, if I'm not mistaken. We have time remaining for further questions, though. I can jump back to this demo and find where we talk about names. Here's the demo about custom names. Now, of course, the name doesn't actually have to be a reference. It can be an actual expression, and the expression can be really complicated. Names are one of my favorite features of Excel. No more questions, anyone? I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope everyone learned a great deal about spread services, and please do let me know if you have any questions. Let me go to the last slide here that has my email address on it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me directly. My email address is sean.lawyer@grapecity.com. My name is Sean Lawyer. I am the product manager for Spread.net and Spread Services. And I want to thank everybody for coming.